So in today's class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the machine learning codes, and I would also discuss the theory. So in theory part, I would be talking about how the machine learning works. And I want you to take a look at the MATLAB code. And as I explain the code, you can try to understand what's going on. And later we will look at the examples. So everyone downloaded the file? Okay. So basically, this is the textbook. And the reason I like this textbook is because unlike what we have been talking about, like we actually looked at a lot of machine learning examples, but when it comes to the deep learning or solving the neural networks, which has multiple layers, we resorted to the standard MATLAB toolbox. But in this book, what author has done is he has not only explained the parts of the machine learning, but he has given his codes that are developed from scratch that can be used for machine learning. And I think this is important is because if you are trying to develop your own algorithm, or if you are trying to use machine learning for a non-standard problem, you can actually see the workings under the hood, like what exactly is going on. So in today's class, I'm actually gonna go through these problems, and the zip file that we actually downloaded, it has all the codes. So zip file has all the codes. So what we would be doing, at least as I'm discussing the logic or the algorithm here, I would strongly recommend that you go on to the MATLAB and then open. So if you go to MATLAB, open, go to desktop, and MATLAB machine learning code master. So MATLAB machine learning master, you can open, and here basically you can click on content, and that will actually show you what are the contents of this folder. You want to include that folder, add to path, select folders and subfolders. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the content for each chapter. And what I would do is the first chapter is just a very brief overview of what machine learning is. And I would be honest that everyone should be familiar with, because we have seen machine learning a lot of times. We also worked out a lot of codes. Next part is the data representation in MATLAB, specifically for machine learning. That depends upon what different data types are inside the MATLAB. Then there are MATLAB the graphics, and then there are some codes which actually implement a simple neural net, which are hard coded. So how do you actually hard code a neural net? And the next few examples from chapter 7, it is the face recognition with deep learning. Chapter 8 is data classification. Chapter 9 is the number classification. Chapter 10, if you recollect, is the Kalman filter that we talked about in last class. Chapter 11 is adaptive control, and chapter 12 is basically autonomous driving. So basically, these are all the applicable areas of machine learning, and I'm going to walk you through all these examples. I was really hoping to run those examples as I work through the theory, but then I realized that they take way lot of time. And then when I start teaching via Zoom, the computer crashes because it cannot handle the MATLAB and Zoom and deep learning at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss the theory. I'm going to show you the code. But my suggestion to you is, as I'm discussing the code, look at the code in the M file. Okay, look at the code in the M file and run that code. You don't have to program it, just run the code. So my online students clear on this? So what you should be looking at, my online students, you should be looking at the code as I discuss. So let me start. So, and you can also skim through this book, but I like this book very much because it actually gives you the code for neurons. It gives you the code for spooling. It gives you the code for convolution and so on. So in the first chapter, this is the same stuff that we talked about. What do we mean by the supervised learning, unsupervised learning, etc. So the first part is, what is supervised learning? What is unsupervised learning? Semi-supervised learning, online learning, the various paradigms of machine learning, different techniques and taxonomy. Taxonomy are different areas. It's a fancy word for different areas, or how you classify the field of machine learning. Then regression, we have spent a lot of time on regression. This is the example. We studied regression in a lot more detail. We looked at the robust sparse regression. We looked at the regression with constraints. We looked at the regression when you have additional data coming in, etc., etc. So these are the regression examples. Then a brief explanation on the neural network, decision trees, expert system, which is the knowledge-based system. Second chapter is about the history. So please understand, machine learning is one of the branches of AI. So if someone asks what is the difference between AI and machine learning, the answer would be machine learning is part of AI. In AI, you have search, you have a sort, and there are different types of algorithms in artificial intelligence. AI is like how can you make machines work, think smarter, and machine learning is a subset of AI techniques. It talks about the control. Now I want to talk about this because this, some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not. This equation is super important. This equation is called as Bayes theorem. How many of you know what Bayes theorem is? So Bayes theorem is a very fundamental theorem in statistical machine learning. So think about like this. What is the probability of A happening, assuming B has happened? So there are two events, and both these events are probabilistic. So let me give you a simple example. If the problem is posed something like this, what is the probability of COVID positive test? Probability of COVID positive test is say 0.8 if someone has COVID. Probability of COVID positive test if someone has COVID is 0.8, which means probability of someone testing negative for COVID, even though that person has COVID, is 0.2. Do you agree with me? Because the total probability And then say in the population, there is 30% chance of someone can have COVID. Based on statistics, in the population, there is 30% chance that someone has COVID. So now, what is the probability that, this is very important, what is the probability if the person I picked has a positive COVID test, really has COVID? You understand? What is the probability of the person, or let me put it this way, what is the probability of a person that I picked from that population tested positive for COVID really has COVID? So here there are two probabilistic approaches. There is a probability that person within the population 30% COVID, 70% do not have COVID, and even that there is some probability associated with the COVID test. So the question is, how do you combine these two probabilities to get a realistic estimate of what the probability would be? And that is what is called as the Bayes theorem. And Bayes theorem is a very logical explanation of combining these two probabilities. And that equation is given something like, if you don't know how to read this equation can be read something like this: probability in the parentheses AI vertical bar B, which means what is the probability of AI given probability of B? What is the probability of AI given B? Is given by probability of B given AI multiplied by probability of AI divided by the probability, all the sum probabilities. So at the denominator, it is the sum. So all the possible probabilities of B given AI. That is how is the Bayes theorem is interpreted. And Bayes theorem is super duper important when we look at the probabilistic machine learning. For an example, if some of you who are interested in maybe autonomous cars or maybe finding probabilistic path planning, probabilistic robotics, Bayes theorem is the cornerstone of probabilistic techniques. So this fundamental theorem is used in lots and lots of applications. Believe it or not, the Kalman filtering equations that we talked about can be derived from the Bayes theorem. And I was surprised to see that in this textbook, they have used this Bayes theorem to derive the Kalman filter equations that we discussed in last class. Clearly, I don't have time to discuss how the Kalman filtering equations get derived from the Bayes theorem. But if you take classes in the stochastic control, or if you take classes in statistical machine learning, or if you take classes when you have probabilistic data that you are going to analyze, then you would certainly use Bayes theorem to analyze this. So remember, Bayes theorem basically says what is the probability of AI given B. And if you then next chapter, this is the regular stuff. You have software for machine learning, MATLAB, Weka, all those toolboxes, computer vision toolboxes. There are different softwares. I don't know if some of you decide to pursue research in the field of target tracking, which is like using radars, multiple radars trying to track one vehicle. So joint probability distribution models and all. So that actually stems from the Bayes theorem. And then there are optimization toolboxes. So now next chapter is something that you can skip, which is just dealing with MATLAB. and all of you have done MATLAB on-ramps and MATLAB webinars. So you should be totally fine with it. It also actually talks about how to load parameters, how to actually do structures, MATLAB structures, and so on. The next chapter is MATLAB plotting. That again, you should be very comfortable with. And now I will skip through this. This is actually just basics of MATLAB. Now, this chapter is interesting. So in this chapter, what author has given, author has actually given the snippets of code wherein he has implemented neuron, convolution, pooling, all those codes inside MATLAB. So rather than using the MATLAB toolbox, if you really want to see how the variables get processed or what operations are performed, then this is the toolbox that author has developed. And the zip file that I gave you includes all the codes. So if you go through this is the first example that I'm going to discuss. Now, how are we going to study this example? So in today's class and in the next class, I'm going to work out, or I will actually go through the examples like face recognition, digit recognition, adaptive control, then autonomous car. Actually, it's a perception problem and other problems that are discussed in this. So what I want you to do is, everyone open the code in chapter 7. My online students and in-person students, please open the code in chapter 7. First and foremost, please understand that by now you should be fairly familiar with this structure of neural network. So by now you should be fairly familiar with the structure of this neural network. So what you have is, you have some input, you have all these layers in between, then you have some activation function, and then what you have is an output. So please note, since there are multiple layers, that data is fed from one layer to other. That's why they are called convolution. And when you have layers more than 7, if you have 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 100, then that is where we call it a deep neural network. Now, this is the first code which talks about how to implement activation function inside MATLAB. So just take a look at the code, which is called activation. S is equal to activation type X, comma K, wherein X is going to be your input, K is the scale factor, and you can actually choose different types of activation functions. Remember sigmoid activation function or tan H activation function or basically ReLU activation function. Those activation functions are implemented in this code. And if you can you are welcome to take a look at the code inside the MATLAB, but this is a simple code that actually talks about the activation function. So as you can see, the ReLU activation function is 0 when the input is 0, and ReLU activation function is equal to input when the input is greater than 0. You have tan H function, and what you have is you have a sigmoid function. And what you can do is, if you want, and please do these exercises. I cannot do these exercises and use Zoom at the same time, but if you have the code, please run this demo. And then basically you will get this nice plots. And you will see there is a sigmoid activation function, there is a ReLU activation function, and basically there is a tan H activation function. Huh?
unrecognized function plots it.
Rectified linear output what?
It gives an error. The error says unrecognized function or variable plots it.
All right. So tell me, how do you fix this? Which means it's not able to find a function. Go to the folder general. Do you see that function in the general folder? Okay, good. Copy that function and put it in the chapter that you are running code. You got it running? Okay, good. How about you, Nira? You got it? Yeah. So online students, you got this working? Did you get it working? No? And then you have issue with some is all you need to add all the folders in your path. How about you, Bhavya? You got it working? Okay, good. Okay. Now the next problem. Okay, good. You see all three activation functions. Good. Okay. Now the next is there is this huge data set which is called ImageNet, which is the as said, it's ImageNet. So there are lots and lots of images. So next thing is there is this function which is called image array. It actually creates the images. So basically it reads the images and puts those images in a folder to process. So that is this image net array, and this is basically capturing the images, and then it's actually storing the images. So this folder that again there is next part of this code is scaling the images, and the next part is the convolution. So we talked about convolution. Can someone tell me in simple words what is convolution? What is convolution? Okay, so here is what the convolution is. Now think about each image, and now you will see the strength of this book. The reason I like this book is because of you can actually see the code. So imagine that you have an image. That image is given as an input matrix. Do you agree with me? Now what you want to do is you want to do something called as convolution. So convolution is you will take this mask. Can you see that mask is 1, 1, 0, 1. And what you will do is you will place that mask. Visualize that you are placing that mask aligning with the first 4 elements of that matrix. Aligning that mask with the first 4 elements of that matrix. And now what you are going to do is you are going to multiply the mask and the underlying data. What it means is if you place that mask onto the first square, which is 5, 2, 3, 1, what the convolution would do is, check this out, 5 multiplied by 1 plus 2 multiplied by 1 plus 3 multiplied by 0 plus 1 multiplied by 1 is what? 8. Do you agree with me? So what convolution did? Convolution shrunk the data. Now what you will do is you will take that mask and shift it by 1 column. If you shift that mask by 1 column, it's going to look like 2 multiplied by 1, 1 multiplied by 1, 0 multiplied by 1, 1 multiplied by 0. My online students, can you see that? So everyone understood? So this mask, you are going to swipe left to right and top to bottom. Just give yourself a minute and see that by convolution is nothing but you have this sort of a filter, or you have this mask that you are actually sweeping row wise, and then you are going to sweep it column wise. Yeah.
So does that mean it has to be within my matrix and it has to be even in order to beat the mask?
No, you can have it. So the only condition for convolution is that the mask has to be smaller than the base matrix. So that is the purpose of convolution.
How is it different from compression?
Okay, in compression, what you do is, in compression, you want to start with a baseline image. You want to start with the baseline image and basically divide that into its most significant component and most insignificant component. And in compression, you would just grab the most significant component. You can think about convolution, it's sort of compression, but it's sort of compression, but mostly it is used for feature identification. So basically it is something similar. Okay, moving on. This is the code for convolution. And what I want you to do is, please look at the code which is called convol. Can you see that code convol? It should be in chapter. In convol, please run this demo. In this demo, what you have is, you have this baseline matrix B, that is the big matrix, right? And you have this filter matrix or the mask matrix, which is 3 by 3 matrix. And then once you run this code, this small matrix sweeps over the big matrix. Are you able to run this code? Okay. Now the next part is, how would you connect the convolution layer? So basically the idea is, next part is the convolution layer, wherein how would you take this operation of convolution and implement that in a layer? And the next part of the code is actually going to show you that. So basically, as you can see, the next code, that each input is what you're sending to the mask is going to pass through an activation function, which is identical to the given mask, and that would actually land up reducing the weights. So please go, it's a fully connected network. And what I would do is, I want you to open this function convolution layer and then run this demo, which actually talks about the inputs and the outputs. So as you can see that your input has a lot more data set, lot more variation, and your output is basically since you are using tan H function, you get random biases and random weights are used here, and you get sort of a flat output. The next part is the pooling. So why is this pooling required? Now the pooling is required so that we reduce the number of points in the convolution layer. So in other words, if you want to reduce the processing, so pooling layers, what do? They take the subset of output and then they pass on. So basically you are operating on a small set, and then basically once you operate, whatever output you get, you pass it on. And at this point, I would like you to open this function, which is called pool. So if you look at that pooling function, so I would encourage you to run the built-in demo, and that would actually show you what happens once you perform the pooling operation. The next part is how do we connect this together? How do we combine all this together? Now, what we have is we have something called as the fully connected network, which means each node is connected to every node. So for fully connected network, this is the simplest traditional neural network. And the next, I want you to open this code, which is called fully connected NN, fully connected neural network. Are you with me so far? And if you look at the structure of this full connection, this is how the feed forward full connection network is. So wherein what you have is you have some weights and you have some biases. So you have an input, that inputs get multiplied with W, and then you add some type of bias, and then you feed all that stuff to a nonlinear function, which could be a ReLU, or it could be a tan H function, or could be a sigmoid function, and then find the output and combine everything together. So next code is that. And now what I want you to do is please run the demo. See, the reason I like this book, because this is giving you the operation under the hood. Remember that MATLAB deep learning toolbox that we used? In MATLAB deep learning toolbox, it was like sort of switches and knobs that you tweak and it will give you output. But if you look at this, this is actually the hardcore code that goes under the machine learning. So this is how it works. Okay, now next part is, this is where the probability comes in the picture. And the probability is basically what we want to do is, we got a neural network output. So neural network will never give you 100% accuracy. Neural network will give you some result, but that result will be uncertain. So we want to estimate how much of uncertainty, what is the probability that result is wrong, or what is the probability that result is right. And for that, what you do is we use something called as the softmax function. Now, what is this softmax function? The softmax function, if you think about it, is the ratio. It is basically your output divided by all the possible outputs. So that is nothing but a generalization of the logistic function, and it's actually normalized so that all the probabilities add to P. And I want you to look at the function softmax in the code. Look at the softmax function in the code, and that is implementing this logistic function. And so think about the probability of getting COVID is 0.8, which means the probability of not getting COVID is 0.2. All the possible probabilities is equal to 1. So that's what we have. What is the probability? Divided by summation of all possible probabilities. That is how the softmax function is implemented. Yeah, question?
So it's also related to Bayes law, correct? In the sense of
It is something similar to the Bayes law,
okay.
Bayes theorem, but this is based on one single incidence of probability. Bayes law comes in the picture that you have one event which is probabilistic. You have another event which is probabilistic. Now, what happens to the total probability when these two events are combined? Which means there is a probability someone has COVID. There is a probability that someone that has COVID will be tested positive. So which means if X guy tests positive, what is the actual probability that that person has COVID? Do you agree with me? So everyone understood that is the basic Bayes theorem. And why I emphasize on Bayes theorem, because if you take statistical machine learning, or if you take estimation, or if you take actually for that matter the topics in perception, Bayes theorem plays a very important role in in that. So I was very pleased to see that in this textbook, what they did is they actually, I'll show you that they went from the Bayes theorem and then they related that with the Kalman filtering, and then you have the particle filtering and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I think it is instructive. Even though we don't code it, at least we run the code and get a feel for what is going on. Okay, now how would you test the concepts that we have learned so far? So basically, this is the neural net function. And what I want you to do is, we are doing nothing else, but we are going to use the pooling, the convolution, all those functions we already looked at together. So at this point, what I want you to do is, I want you to run this code, which is called test NN. Just run test NN. Now, what is this test NN? So you have images of cat. And then what you are going to do is, you are going to train a network based on those cat images. And those cat images are nothing but 2 by 2. It's just a matrix, M by N matrix. And then what you're going to do is, once your neural network is trained, you are going to feed that neural network a new image, a new cat image. And then you are going to ask that neural network, hey, what is the probability that the new image that I have fed is like a cat, or similar to the things that we have studied. My online students, everyone understood this? So please run the code test NN. Did you? Now, I want you at this point to look at the images. You should have a folder with the images, IMG 3886. All those images you should have. Do you have the data set of images? It's throwing an error. Did anyone get it working? Okay. All right. I think
I think you have to just copy this to maybe, there's a folder called as cats 1 2 3 4.
you haven't added all the folders in the
Uh-huh.
path.
Uh-huh.
Then still it is giving you error. How about you? You got it working?
Yeah, that one works.
How about you? Okay. Okay. Now, this is what is happening, that you have convolution layer, you have pooling layer, fully connected layer, soft. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to basically, this, are you able to see these images? Convolution neural network, convolution layer, pool layer, and fully connected layer, all these. Are you able to see this image? Okay. Okay, in the next part, and this is going to take a long time. Okay, so what I want you to do is, I just want you to run the code. I'll tell you what is happening. Now you have this huge data set of images. You are going to use that data set, do the convolution, do the pooling and softmax, everything. And please note, you are going to use the code that was already discussed earlier. So at this time, I want you to run this code. So you should be able to see the MATLAB script, train NN. Do you see that? Open train NN.
If the code is already running, can I run another code?
That will slow your computer.
So I did test and it still runs.
Test is still running.
Yeah.
Okay, then don't run the code. Let someone else run the
I
code.
know.
Yeah, you can actually sit with him just to see.
Yeah.
Now you can run the test and then you will see, depending upon the computer that you have, it will take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not gonna do it because when I try doing it with Zoom crash.
Sorry, was it from your test? You said-
No, so test. So basically, go to basically first go to run train NN. That will work on the whole data set. It will, so we did test earlier.
Yeah, we-
So now I want you to do the train. So open train NN. So this is basically the neural network under the hood. And if you think about it, the building blocks of this neural network are very simple, right? What we did is we we saw a very simple MATLAB code. Of course, there is an algorithm wherein you need to run through different for loops, but there's an algorithm that you used to do the convolution. There's an algorithm that you used to do the pooling. There is an algorithm that you use to run the softmax. But at the end, when you combine that together, please see that you will get some result, something like this. And please note, this is no way as sophisticated as the MATLAB toolbox for neural network, but you can see how that neural network is working. And once you run that code, it will take about 10 minutes for you to get the result. Online students, anything? Yes. Yes, the output of the CNN, yes. They're shown in 3D. Then it would be so basically if the data is tensor. No. We haven't used PCA. We have not used PCA in here. You can actually make it run better. To be honest with you, that's a good point. If you want to improve the neural network, what you can do is you can use some sort of PCA or you can use wavelet, and that way actually pre-process the data. So that would be that is easier to classify or better to get better results. Does that answer your question? Okay. Did anyone get any answers? Does anyone have supercomputer? Yeah, it will run for 10 minutes. And don't run anything else, otherwise the computer will crash. Because that code is not optimized. It's running on CPU, it's not GPU running code. It doesn't run in parallel. It's a simple serial code, but that's all there is to it, the neural network. Okay, the next part, and again, I'm not going to run the code here as well, but I'll tell you what this second part is. This is another simple example, is wherein he's talking about decision trees. Remember, we studied the decision trees. Decision trees are like, okay, what is the age of the person? What is the weight of the person? That will give you the BMI. What is the height of the person? That gives you the BMI. And based on BMI, you can classify whether someone is obese, someone is overweight, someone is normal weight. So that basically the structure is sort of a decision tree. Now the next part is the data classification based on the decision tree. But here we are not deciding the threshold or the bounds, but looking at the data, the code is going to decide what are the separation boundaries. So that is all there to it. So what you have is, this is first code is the classification classifier set that actually generates the random data and assigns to different classes. And then this is the code for random classes. And then you will see that these are the two different classes that are shown. So once you run this code, you should be able to see the classification with the boundary. And the next part is you can actually implement some sort of separating function, which is, and then you can actually look at how to draw the decision trees. And this drawing decision trees, if you were to look at binary decision trees, like 0 or 1 type of decision tree, that code is given as draw binary tree. So that is the code. So you will have to look at the codes in chapter 8. And here is the whole code. And again, then there is a code for drawing the boxes. Then there is the code for drawing the binary tree. And what I want you to do is, finally, I want you to run this code, which is called function demo. Just run this code. And once you run this code demo, you are going to get this type of a structure. And this is the classification structure. So think about it like you start with a feature A. If your A is greater than 0.1, you will check what is the value of B. If your B value is greater than 0.2, then you would have again classification. So your data would actually trickle down and finally fall into these 4 bins. And these are the different bins wherein that data would go. We actually saw similar example like classification of flowers based on the petal length, petal width, and all sort of stuff. So this is sort of the decision tree, but this is the under the hood functioning of the code. And as you can see, this code is not long. This code is relatively short code, but still, finally, you can actually construct a decision tree. And how is decision tree implemented? Decision tree implemented is basically something called as, you talk about entropy and information. And then basically, based on the information or the data that you receive, correct. The value 0.1, 0.2, etc. are determined during the training. That is correct. And that will come in next few more slides. So if you go through that, then there is this homogeneity measure that is actually used to find out the threshold boundaries. And this entropy that I just talked about, the impurity, which is the amount of information that data contains, and so on. So what I want you to do is, if you want to see how this homogeneity measure works, just look at the demo and run this demo, and then you will see that it will give you the distribution. It will show you the sort of the classification data. So run the demo. So, and then next part is, how would you implement the decision tree? So based on the feature that you are looking at, then you will ask the question about classification. Then based on as more and more information comes in, you train and then decide the threshold. So the next part, this is just a manual implementation of the decision tree. So the next code is decision tree. Take a look at it. And then what you have is, you have all this code that actually runs through the decision tree. The next part is the handmade decision tree, wherein you are deciding, you are giving the vertices, you are giving the faces, and then finally you are actually trying to using this information to create a classifier, and you can run through the demo of this code. And then you will see that you are going to get the decision boundaries and the data set depending upon different lengths and different widths. The last part, which I would really like you to try, is when you feed the data, but once you run the training, the decision tree decides the threshold. So basically that is run in the training data set. So I want you to look at the code, which is the code is decision tree. So open that, and therein you would have the vertices and the faces. But here we are not going to manually decide the threshold. We will run that through the code, and then the code, it will actually use the function training, and the training function will actually decide the threshold. And again, you will have to solve an optimization problem there to find out those thresholds. And then finally, you will be getting the results, something like this. And please note here, these values are not hard coded by us, but these values are solved or found out using during the training of the decision tree. So I would strongly encourage you to run this code and see. I like these MATLAB codes because they actually give you under the hood or how that whole thing works. It's not like a black box, like a MATLAB toolbox, wherein you structure the data, feed the data to a MATLAB box or MATLAB function, and it gives you output. Here you can actually see a step-by-step building block through which that system or the whole neural network is constructed. Now the next example is number classification using neural network. And please understand, we actually looked at the similar example like handwriting detection. And the reason I want to emphasize on this code is I know some of you are trying to do the optional project. Some of you are trying to do the optional project. So if you use this code, that will save you tons and tons of work. So basically you can actually use the code in chapter 9 and then actually solve the handwriting classification problem, handwriting optional project. So wherein here you have the data, but please note this data is not sharp. And you may say, hey, we can do some wavelet transform and some others transform and make that data sharp. But the idea here is, even if we have the probabilistic data, how do we deal with it? So basically what you have is, you have the data, you have the image, but that is smudged. And you can go through this code. And here, now what we will do here, what they are doing is, they are using the built-in MATLAB tool. And basically, again, the code for neural network, neuron, is given to you. You can use different types of functions. You can use different activation functions, sigmoid, step, log, tan, sum. And then you can go on. And then there is this code for neuron. I just want to show you. A simple neuron code is input multiplied by output plus bias. And then what you do is you feed that to an activation function and then run through this code. And then basically you have this neural network training code. And this is actually a very simple connected network. And basically that actually does the back propagation. So I would strongly encourage you that take a look at this. And this is where the actual back propagation is implemented in MATLAB. And then the last part is, you can actually run this on a very simple one output node neural network. So here is one output neural network. And you can actually run this code, which is shown over here, wherein you can train the network and you can plot the results. And then you can actually test the neural network. So if you want to run this code, the code is in digit training data script. So chapter 9, digit training data. If you run through that code, it will actually do it for one sample image. And if you want to do it with multiple output nodes, then what you do is you have to use the function neural net MLFF, which is for multiple output. And then you can actually run through this code and it will do the actual classification. So I would encourage you to try these codes on your own, and I'm sure that will give you more understanding of the functioning or how the neural network functions. Next part is very important, and I'm not going to discuss this today, but I will discuss that in next class. But this part is super important. Remember the Kalman filter that we talked about, wherein we have an imperfect measurement, we have an imperfect underlying dynamical model. So these two imperfection, these two probabilistic entities, how do we combine these two probabilistic entities with some error, still find the best possible output? So that is all there to it in Kalman filtering. So in next class, this would be the last class, we will go through the state estimator. We will also look through the Bayes theorem. And if you are going to take the perception class, or if you are going to take the robot learning class, or you are going to take the Bayesian learning class, this is the whole structure of robot learning. You basically have a Bayesian filter. Then depending upon the probabilistic nature, you can have a Gaussian process, or you could have a non-Gaussian process. Then you can have a Gauss-Hermite Kalman filter, Monte Carlo Kalman filter. If you have a nonlinear system, you have an uncentered Kalman filter, you have an extended Kalman filter. So that comes under nonlinear. If you have a linear system, you have the linear Kalman filter. And nowadays, I don't know if you might have seen a lot of discussion on particle filters. In autonomous navigation, the autonomous driving cars, they use particle filters. Why do they use particle filters? Because the noise or the data corruption is non-Gaussian. So when the data is non-Gaussian, at that time what you have is something called as the particle filter. Particle filters, they used to be computationally very time consuming. That's why they were mostly of theoretical interest. But in the last 10 years or so, since a lot of computational power became available at very cheap cost, the filters like particle filters, resampling, non-sampling, sequential, bootstrap, Gaussian, all those particle filters are implemented for real life application. So what we are going to do is in next class, I will discuss this Kalman filter. Then we will work through some of these examples. The math that is given here is just fantastic. Unfortunately, I won't be able to discuss that math because some of it is beyond my capabilities. But I would encourage you to keep this in mind if you study statistical machine learning, or if you study Markov learning processes or Markov decision processes, all that stuff. And then this all starts with a Gaussian simple Bayes theorem, and then the conventional Kalman filter is derived. So I will go through all this, and then what we will do is the next chapter, which is actually, there is an example here for uncentered Kalman filter. The next chapter is actually I'm super excited about, is something called as adaptive filtering or adaptive control. Remember the reinforcement learning that we talked about? Reinforcement learning we talked about in last class. That is nothing but a version of adaptive control. And how adaptive control is related to the reinforcement learning would be very clear when we work through this chapter. And we work actually, so the concept of self-tuning based on learning, how would you tune the gains based on the data that you get? So here are some simple MATLAB examples that we will walk through it, that will show you how you can learn based on the data that is coming in. And the important part, which is very closely associated with reinforcement learning, is something called model reference adaptive control. Believe it or not, model reference adaptive control is used for flight control of Bell 609. That is the same control algorithm that I used when I worked on the flight control systems for tilt rotor aircraft. Why tilt rotor aircraft flight control systems need model adaptive control? Because tilt rotor, if you don't know what that is, it takes off as a helicopter and then it flies as a plane, which means the control authority or control logic that you need in the helicopter mode is different than the control algorithm that you need for the fixed wing mode. So we use model reference adaptive control. And believe it or not, therein you can implement, we will talk about all this. There is an example for a rotor. Then this is my favorite example, which I would discuss, which is you have an aircraft, actual aircraft dynamics, and then you want to control the aircraft dynamics. You have to do some trimming, and you have, how would you do this? And then how do you trim the aircraft? Means find the equilibrium where the aircraft is in the stationary flight. Aircraft trimming means aircraft is stationary flight. Aircraft cannot have zero velocity. Okay, so aircraft has to have some forward velocity. So aircraft is flying in a steady level flight is called as trimming. So this does the trimming, but the next part is then how do you use neural network to learn, or how do you use a neural network to tune the controller algorithms for this aircraft? So this is where the adaptive control meets reinforcement learning. So finding neural net for learning control. So this problem is what I would discuss in next class. And please note, you have all this code, and this code is not small code, it is actually a huge code, but you have all this code, and this book is also available free of charge to you thanks to ASU library. So please use these resources to gain more understanding. And the last part, if I get time, it is basically combining the LiDAR images, and this is actually a perception problem. If you're going to take a perception class, you will do something similar like this, like autonomous driving, wherein you are actually combining the data from LiDAR, you have the radar data, you combine that data, then you actually estimate the target, and then actually you do the passing control and so on. And then you integrate a dynamics model, and then clearly everything is probabilistic. So the measurement that you get from LiDAR are not super reliable. Your vehicle dynamics model is not super reliable. The speed that is estimated from the speedometer is not super reliable. Use Kalman filter. So that is where you use Kalman filter. And then what you do is do the hypothesis testing, MHT, and all that stuff. So this is where if you are going to take the perception class, or if you are interested in perception, this is the beginning of perception, autonomous driving, and so on. So in next class, unfortunately, that would be the last class. I'm going to discuss Kalman filtering, adaptive control, and if time permits, I will discuss autonomous control. If you like what you have seen in this book, you should definitely check out the companion book, which is the machine learning recipes by MATLAB, in MATLAB by the same authors. It's also available free of cost at ASU library. The code for that book, they are also available on GitHub. So you can actually download those codes and play with it. The beauty of it is you can use these codes for your projects, for your research. As long as you attribute them, it should be okay. With that, I'm going to stop here, and I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you next week And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. Any questions from anyone? My online students, any questions? If not, I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for coming to the class today. And thank you for attending the lecture. So everyone finished all the assignments? Any question about the assignments? Assignments, everyone finished? Everyone is set to get an A? Okay, very good. Anyone trying for A pluses? Anyone trying for A plus? Doing the optional project? No, yes. No one wants to try for A pluses. Everyone is happy with A. Okay, does anyone need any extension on assignments, or can I start grading and start posting grades? Are you done with all the assignments? Which one is remaining? Oh, last one. Oh, okay. By the way, for the last assignment, I know if you were to do it on in the online thing, it's actually time consuming. But what you can do is you can do it inside your computer. You can off. So I would strongly recommend doing that. You don't do it online. You basically do it on your computer. If you MATLAB Simulink, there is an on-ramp associated with your software. So that is the best way to complete that assignment. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop here.